My father-in-law blew up when I asked for his blessing to marry his daughter. Should I tell her what happened? Here's some context. We've been together for 5 years and living together for 4, and it's the best, most fulfilling relationship I've ever had. She works in healthcare, and it was her kindness toward those in need that initially attracted me to her. Over the last 4 years, we've had some minor disagreements, but only one major argument. The big fight happened in October 2014. She had planned a lunch with her father, Carl, but I had to miss it due to a work emergency. Later that evening, Carl called me, accusing me of not respecting him and avoiding family events to not be around him. This wasn't true, as I had played a major role in organizing his birthday party, which was a big event. I told my girlfriend about his call the next morning, and she dismissed it, saying he was likely intoxicated. The following weekend, we went to her parents' house for our usual Sunday family dinner, but Carl was very hostile toward me. I didn't say anything until he mentioned that I shouldn't have missed the lunch. I apologized and said I'd make up for it. At the next dinner, I brought him a gift of smart wearable accessories, as my girlfriend had mentioned he was interested in them. He refused to accept the gift, and when I insisted, he walked out, saying he needed air. I was confused, and my girlfriend's mom repeatedly apologized for Carl's behavior. When we got home, I asked my girlfriend if there was something I didn't know, and at first, she tried to brush it off. Then she told me it was my fault for not realizing that Carl didn't want to be my friend, but rather, he wanted my respect. This came as a complete shock because I had never thought of him as anything other than her father. We would occasionally watch games together, but that was the extent of our interactions. My girlfriend said I needed to earn his respect, but I felt I hadn't done anything wrong. That's when the argument began. A few days later, Carl called me to say he liked the watch and accessories, which I guess was his way of making peace. After that, I was always extra careful and never to miss any event with him. Last June GF's mother died and it was an incredibly difficult time for everyone. I tried to be as supportive towards the whole family as I could. I cut down my work hours to spend more time with them. GF and I started cooking the family dinner, at his place, because she thought it would be better for him to see the house alive with people again, and we made it an every-week event for a while just to spend more time with him. Multiple times we made extra effort to host family events, and once we even flew his elder sister over for his birthday. I had thought he would warm up to me a little. But I guess I was wrong. Which brings us to today. GF is away for the week on work-related stuff, so I planned the whole proposal. I was gonna decorate our apartment like a planetarium with stars and planets and write, "Will you marry me, in the stars?" It's from Friends, which she is obsessed with. I wanted to start the preparations with his blessing, because that way he would feel good about me asking him first and he'd feel included also. I planned a lunch with him for today to ask for his blessing. I told him how much respect I had for him and that I wish one day I could be as good a father as he was. Then when I asked for his blessing for the marriage, he blew up. He was absolutely livid, saying that her daughter deserves a better man and that he never really liked me much and had always hoped the relationship would end. He said all the ass-kissing I was doing last year had showed that I just wanted to appear like a good man to GF and didn't mean any of that. I was so shocked because this is not how I expected it to go at all. I left him while he was still angry, and went to stay with one of my friends. I told them everything, but they were just as shocked as I was. I spent the rest of the day at their place and just got home a couple of hours ago. I'm unsure how to move forward or what to do next. Should I tell my girlfriend that her father said no? Should I act like nothing happened? For now, I'm just drinking and playing video games. What should I do, Reddit? Note, I've kept some details vague intentionally because my girlfriend and her siblings are active on Reddit. I'm not sure what I expect to get out of this, but writing it down and sharing it with strangers might help me gain some clarity. At this point, though, I feel like our marriage is beyond repair. Also, English isn't my first language, so apologies for any mistakes that may cause confusion. I've been with my wife for almost 9 years, and we've been married for 2. For the most part, our relationship has been fulfilling and satisfying for both of us. It might sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but we've both grown as individuals because of each other. I'm an old-fashioned person, so it was tough for me to find someone who shared my interests and values. The one major issue in our relationship has been my relationship with my father-in-law. My wife and I rarely argue, but most of our big fights have been because of him. I want to make it clear, though, that I don't hate him. I respect him. He's sacrificed a lot to provide for his family and ensure my wife had a loving upbringing. In the early years of our relationship, I looked up to him. He and my mother-in-law would host family gatherings twice a week, and when I first started dating their daughter, I was struck by how close-knit they were as a family. I loved those family dinners, with their minor conflicts and moments of contentment, and seeing how close my wife was with her siblings and parents. Early on in the relationship I think I freaked out my wife by how much I enjoyed being at her parents' house. Her mother was a saint of a woman who gave me so much love from the get-go. She would always make sure I was included in family activities and often reserved a seat for me at the family dinner right next to her, talking to me like I was one of her own. I remember one time I was over at their place and had to get back to the city for work. It was getting pretty late when I got up to leave and it had been snowing. She came down from her room when I was leaving, with an overcoat of her husband saying I should take the coat with me, just in case. But I know it was because she knew my car got cold those days. It was a POS car getting to the end of its life. She didn't want me to feel like she thought less of me just because I made less money than my wife. These little mom things she would do made me love her so much. Anyway, the reason I bring up my mother-in-law is because I think she was the reason her husband was accepting of me at the time. She died 4 years ago and it somehow changed him. I think his love meter broke or something. He started acting like I'd somehow slighted him. All the time. Like one time wife and I were bringing over some groceries and restocking everything and I thought it would be nice to stay for the dinner and cook for him. While he was out for his evening walk, wife and I prepared a nice dinner. At dinner, he thanked my wife for it. She mentioned that I did most of the work for it and he kind of looked at me and just stopped talking. In September 2016, we were staying at my father-in-law's place for the weekend because we were preparing the family dinner. One morning, my wife and I were sitting at the breakfast counter, starting our day, and we thought he was out since he usually woke up early. I made a joke, lightly tapping my wife on the leg, and apparently, he saw it. He immediately started yelling at me, accusing me of being poorly raised and calling me a woman beater. He said a lot of toxic things about me before my younger sister-in-law came into the kitchen and basically had to drag him away. My wife kept explaining that it was just a joke, but he wouldn't accept it, claiming that she was just defending me. I also remember another time, back when his wife was still alive, I bought him a gift, and he outright refused to accept it in front of the whole family. My wife's mother, brother, their families, both sisters, their husbands, and the elder sister's kid were all there. It was incredibly humiliating for me. I just wanted him to stop hating me. A few days later, I think my mother-in-law forced him to accept the gift and apologize to me. After my mother-in-law passed away, he changed completely. It was as if his filter was gone. He started spending a lot of time in his room, only coming out for errands and walks. He stopped watching games with me, complaining that I talked too much. He wouldn't let me fix anything around the house, even though I had practically lived there before and done a lot of work for the family. My friends jokingly theorized that he resented me because I was too close to his wife, which seemed ridiculous to me. She had been like a mother to me, and I couldn't understand why that would upset him. She was kind to everyone, and so is my wife, to the point of it sometimes being a fault. My mother-in-law used to joke that she had 4 sons, her son, the 2 husbands of my wife's sisters, and me. So it wasn't as if I had an inappropriate relationship with her. I've talked about this with my wife many times, but she insists that my closeness with her mother isn't the issue. My wife, being the youngest daughter, shows her father a lot of love and respect. Early on in our relationship, his behavior wasn't a problem, and by the time it became an issue, we were already too serious for me to walk away because of it. As far as I know, everyone else in her family likes me. Both of her sisters have invited me over for meals, favors, and gatherings. They treat me like family. I've spoken to her eldest sister about why their father dislikes me, but she always insists that he doesn't hate me. She says he loves his youngest daughter deeply and has always been a hard person to please, which I believe is true. On an average day, he's more tolerant of me than the other sons-in-law. But since they all live in different places, my wife and I are the ones he sees the most, which probably adds to his resentment. After my mother-in-law died, we were all heartbroken. A few days after her funeral, when everyone was starting to leave, my wife and I were going through some of the stuff that her mother left her. She started getting choked up about the fact that the house felt like it had died with her. We decided that we were going to take on the mantle of cooking for family dinners like her mom used to do. It's a pretty big responsibility considering the family is almost never all together except maybe one holiday a year. Sometimes it would just be my father-in-law, brother-in-law and his family and us. It was actually really nice for a while. Everyone kept visiting once in a while and the routine was nice. I was glad to have more time for family and not being harassed by father-in-law. It felt like he was warming up to me. At that time, wife and I started talking about marriage and it just felt right. I don't think I was ever more sure about anything than about marrying my wife at that time. There was a brief moment before the engagement where she and I got into a fight, but things worked out nicely. We got engaged in May and it just set things in motion. My wife is the youngest child in her family, so she got a lot of positive attention from her siblings. They had kept her mother's wedding accessories for her, which honestly was such a nice thing to do. And slowly, over the months, it became this big and happy event in our family. Winter of 2016, when we got married, my wife sat me down and asked me if it would be okay to move in back with her father to take care of him. I think that was the moment where I made the stupidest decision of my life when I said yes. I was blinded by love, not just for my wife but for her family, for her mother who I missed so much, for her father who liked me but never really accepted me, and for her siblings who liked me like I was their own. I just thought about what would be best for everyone else. A month after we moved in, my father-in-law asked his son if he could come stay with them for a while. At the time it felt like a good thing that he was moving past the grief of his wife's death. But I don't think that was why he visited his son. He just wanted to get out of the house because of me. A few weeks later, when he got back, his passive-aggressive bullshit started again. But this time it was just constant nagging over small, petty things. I moved the chair, no, I didn't. I broke the thermostat, no, and I changed it for good measure, I forgot to put the tools back. I messed up the library. Things like that, almost if I'm a child who's unwanted in this house. May 2017, we had a huge fight and I gave my wife a choice to either live with me or live with her father. That made her have a fight with her father and she decided she was gonna move out because, in her own words, he is never going to accept you as his son. He's delusional in grief. So we moved out but still lived close by because both our jobs were quite close. Our decision to move out disrupted the family dinner tradition, as her father refused to come to our place for dinners. We couldn't afford to host everyone in our small apartment, and it became a logistical challenge. So, her brother took over and said he'd host the dinners instead. I think their father was really upset with me for ruining the tradition because during every dinner I had with him, he wanted nothing to do with me. While I actually preferred it this way, since it felt good not being attacked or defended all the time, my wife started resenting me for it, and I think her younger sister and brother do too. It's been nearly 2 years since we moved out. I rarely attend family dinners now, maybe once a month if I'm being generous. I've also gotten busier with work, so I spend less time with my wife during the weekdays, which I prefer given her growing resentment towards me. She goes to her brother's house every other weekend, and the alternate weekends are spent at her father's place, where they gather for dinner. The only person who seems to be on my side is my older sister-in-law, as she believes her father has treated me poorly. She's visited us twice over the past year, and those visits are the only times I've received any affection from my in-laws. It feels like, just 2 years ago, I had a huge family who loved me, but now I'm increasingly lonely month by month. I can't help but feel that our marriage has made our lives worse. It's been over 2 months since my wife and I have been intimate in our bedroom, and much longer since we've had a date just for ourselves. I'm completely at a loss as to what I can do to fix things. This post ended up being longer than I intended. I edited some details because I don't want my in-laws to come across it on Reddit and feel hurt by what I've written. TLDR, I feel like my wife loves me the least out of everyone in her life. This problem has only worsened since we moved into her father's house due to his failing health. Update. Some people messaged me asking for an update, so I thought I'd post here rather than respond individually. Over the past few months, I've read many relationship help books and tried repeatedly to work things out with my wife, but the reality is that we just don't work as a couple anymore. I'm no longer a priority in her life, and that's something I can't accept. So, last month, I decided to contact a lawyer and begin the divorce process. It's been a tough period, especially with the reactions from most of her family, but I know I need to focus on myself and start healing. The support from the folks at /r/dead bedrooms has also been helpful, and reading through posts there has given me a clearer perspective on my marriage. Thanks again to everyone who offered support on my previous posts. To give some background, my inability to get along with her family, especially her father, made the marriage difficult for me. Her father always disliked me, even once saying my ex-wife deserved better. For more context, you can look at my earlier posts. I'm not sure if I can link them here. After the divorce, I felt a deep sense of loss, as I was heavily involved with her family and had few connections outside of them, being an immigrant here. COVID lockdowns during the divorce made it even harder, as they completely severed my ties with her family. The isolation was hard, and dating was difficult. The dating world is so different from what I remember, and I haven't met anyone I felt strongly about. One relationship that seemed promising ended in 2021, partly because her friends weren't fond of me and vice versa. I've stopped dating altogether since then and have lost touch with a few friends, possibly because of age and the fact that many of them now have families, making it hard for them to find time. But anyway, I saw my ex-wife a few times in the last 2 years and we exchanged some quick words about well-being. But nothing substantial. I knew she lost her father due to COVID, and I told her I was sorry for her loss because he loved her very much. She also told me she was dating a younger man and it was going well. However, we never sat down for tea or anything, it just never happened. But 2 months ago I got a message from her saying she wanted to meet for lunch. During this lunch she told me her relationship of 1 year and some months was not going well and she was thinking of breaking up with her boyfriend. She and him did not agree on kids or not having kids. And she did not see a future with him. We kept in touch through the last 2 months and 12 days ago she broke up with him. She told me a part of the reason was that after talking to me, she remembered how it was with me when we first started dating and how it was not the same with her boyfriend. She and I have been talking a lot in the last few weeks. Since the break-up, the first thing she does after waking up every morning is message me. And then 2 days ago she called at 7 in the morning saying she was at my door with some food. I had been feeling ill but I don't remember when I told her. However, she came with a lot of home-cooked food and soups which she knows I like. It felt like we were back in time 10 years ago. Since then, it's been a very confusing time. I'm not entirely sure what I feel. Lately, I think I might be starting to fall for her again. She's been paying me so much attention, which feels really nice. She even brings food or sends it over regularly, and last night, she stayed over because I was too sick to take care of things on my own. Nothing romantic happened, but I have a feeling she might be open to discussing us getting back together. I have to admit, all the care and affection are starting to feel amazing. I'm not really sure who to turn to, but I feel like I may need to take a few days to step back and clear my head. It's been a while since I've felt this good about myself, and I keep wondering if things could go differently if we tried again, especially since many of our issues were due to her father's interference. Any advice or support to help me work through this would mean a lot. TLDR, I'm thinking about giving things another shot with my wife. A lot has changed, but I'm unsure if we should start dating again. Any advice? Update. It's been an emotional roller coaster. On Saturday, she came over to talk about our relationship, our future, and what went wrong. She wanted to speak first, and in hindsight, I probably should have shared my side first. She focused on her relationship with her family, especially her father, and how much they impacted our marriage. She apologized for letting her family, particularly her father, interfere. One thing that hurt was when she brought up her ex-boyfriend, who never wanted to be around her family and even avoided simple family dinners. She said she realized then how much I'd supported her by being willing to attend family events, even with her father's presence. It stung because I'd often told her, before and after her mother's passing, that while I supported her family involvement, she needed to set some boundaries between our marriage and her father. She shared that her ex had distanced himself after her father made a rude comment, which I told her was understandable. I reminded her of that difficult moment, 5 years into our relationship, when her father told me he couldn't give his blessing for our marriage. It hurt deeply hearing that she only recognized her family's toxic influence because of her ex's reaction, as if my own concerns had never been enough. When I shared this with her, she became tearful and apologized repeatedly. She admitted she was young and uncertain back then, and after her mom's death, she clung to her father, which made it hard for her to hear any criticism of him. I brought up another instance when her father criticized my cooking at a family dinner, and she hadn't wanted to listen to me, even when her sister supported my feelings. Talking about her father ended up dominating our conversation for almost 2 hours. It seemed like she had a lot to process as well. It was intense and draining, and I regretted not speaking first about the other issues we needed to discuss, like our intimacy struggles. Afterward, we started making lunch together, and she mentioned how much she missed doing things like that with me, which, apparently, her ex hadn't appreciated. While we ate, we reminisced about moments we'd shared, like the 2 road trips we took after we got married. In the beginning, when we were still studying, we had more time together, but as life got busier, those moments dwindled. When I finally brought up our intimacy issues, she admitted she hadn't prioritized my needs in that aspect of our marriage. She expressed regret for this and said if we were to try dating again, she'd want us to see a relationship counselor, both together and on her own, to address these issues. I think it's a good idea to have someone to help us communicate better, as she sometimes talks over me or doesn't fully let me share my side. I plan to bring this up with her, but I'll wait until we have a counselor on board. Overall, I feel like our conversation went well. I'm considering asking her out for a proper date this week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. After she went back home last night, I found myself missing her presence, though I'm unsure if that's a sign of wanting her back or simply a sign of loneliness. While she was here, she took a call from one of her siblings and mentioned me by name, which felt significant to me. Maybe I'm looking for signs where there are none, but I can't help but see it as positive. She offered to come over today, but I told her I was feeling better and didn't need her to cook for me. This morning, I spent some time looking through old photos of us, which reminded me of who she used to be. I felt a glimpse of that person yesterday, and I wonder if I'm rushing into this. I know I've said I wanted to take things slow, but waiting just for the sake of it feels unproductive. I want us to see a counselor soon and proceed cautiously, but I'm also afraid that if I don't show interest, I might lose her. TLDR, we talked through our issues, mostly centered on her father, our relationship struggles, and intimacy. She expressed interest in individual counseling, which I think is a positive step. Now, I'm considering asking her out for a date this week, maybe Wednesday. Does that seem too soon?